When I was 14, there was a boy that I liked, and he asked me to be his girlfriend. I said yes, I liked him, so that was easy. But after a few weeks, it was kind of clear that we really weren't compatible as boyfriend-girlfriend. I kept getting in trouble with him for doing things like having friends that were boys, or keeping correspondence with friends from long in my past that are boys, or other situations that just made me feel like I need to change to be with this person. So that was really just discouraging, and I started to wonder how things might work out. And maybe they weren't going to work out. At 14, that's kind of a big deal. And so I spent some time trying to work out my feelings, and I wrote one of my first poems that wasn't a school project. And I asked him to read it, or to listen to me read it to him. And it was sort of a situation where I was already mad. So one of the lines from the poem was, "I'm sorry you're mad, but I'm angry too. If you don't want me, then I don't need you." We broke up. I thought that I would have closure because, they always say that you need to be able to say how you feel and make sure the other person knows and to get it out, and then you'll feel better. I did for about 5 minutes. I don't think that relationship was ever restored to any sort of friendship like I'd been able to with other people. I'm sorry, Thomas. So, what gives you the most satisfaction? When you've spoken your mind and the other person has heard you? End of story? Or when you speak your mind and the other person has spoken theirs, and you sit long enough to work it out? See, the thing about reconciliation, it's difficult, but it's not complex, in my opinion. It simply requires both parties being willing to sit long enough to work things out. And there are, of course, exceptions to all kinds of relationships. And just to be clear, I'm not going to speak to abusive relationships in this context that I'm sharing today. So let's have some grace for that. But forgiving and reconciling are two different things. Forgiveness doesn't really require that the other person be present. It doesn't require that they are repentant or otherwise make amends. Of course, they're preferred, right? It's not required to forgive someone. Forgiveness is between you and God, and if the other person wants to be involved, that is excellent, okay? Forgiveness is different from reconciliation because reconciliation is often conditioned to the attitude and the action of the one who is wrong and has asked for forgiveness. See, forgiveness is not a promise of reconciliation, and it likely is going to require more time depending on the wrong and whether it's a repeat offense. So what is reconciliation? What isn't it? What is God's plan for reconciliation? And then my favorite from the Jelly Telly series that you can get 5-minute family devotionals online in YouTube, they have their little thing, and then at the end they say, how do we live this out? How do we put shoes on this and walk it, guys? So reconciliation is, by definition, the restoration of friendly relations, the act of making one view or belief compatible with another, renewal of fellowship and relationship. Those are all very nice. Something that reconciliation is not. I know that Rick and I both have shared readings from Skye Jethani throughout all portions of our interactions with church and meetings and interactions. So he sent this to me yesterday. Jesus said that peacemakers would be called the sons of God. He did not mean this in any messianic sense. It was common in Jewish culture to use sons sons to attach someone to a characteristic or an identity. For example, Jesus also called the Pharisees sons of serpents, and that's in Matthew 23. And that was because of their hypocrisy. Peacemakers are called the sons of God because our Heavenly Father is also a peacemaker. But the way God makes peace is important to identify. Our popular perception of peacemakers, perhaps influenced by the world's negative connotations in counseling, is that of weakness and avoidance. Guilty. Sometimes. It is the person who desires the appearance of serenity while suppressing any visible conflict. We're fine. It's okay. No problem. That doesn't work very well. They avoid the conflict and costly work of forging a real reconciliation. Such a person is not a peacemaker, but a peace faker, and cannot be called a child of God. I love how he just kind of, like it or not, this is, how to be blunt. So what is God's plan for reconciliation? The Apostle Paul tells us that God has reconciled to himself all things, making peace by the blood of the cross. It's from Colossians 1:20. The cross reveals God's kind of peacemaking. It is costly and it's painful. Jesus did not forge peace by denying the evil in the world or by avoiding its power, but by facing it directly. It was a hard-won peace, worthy of God's praise. In Matthew 5:23 and 24, this is probably familiar to many of you. So if you are offering your gift at the altar, and there remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift there before the altar and go. First, be reconciled to your brother, and then come and offer your gift. And sometimes we talk about how all we need is to be reconciled with God. And he clearly states he's asking us to reconcile with each other because he knows that not being able to reconcile with each other, his people, his sons and daughters, just like you're his son or his daughter, is going to cause a conflict in that connection. Matthew 18:6 says, "Go to your brother and talk about how you were wronged," to restore the relationship, to get help from others if necessary. Remember, it's not about who's right, but about being reconciled. Now, as the youngest in a family of 5, just 3 kids, thank God, and there were a lot of times where I was wrong, or not wrong, but being the youngest kind of gives you that disadvantage of lacking life experience that the other ones have. And therefore, more people are right more quickly, more often than you. And so when you have this opportunity to be right, boy, is that exciting. I might have carried some of that into adulthood. I like to be right. Biblical examples of reconciliation, I think, are relevant and important. So I see throughout the Bible and my own life that God allows conflict. And with reconciliation comes an even more solid and deeper relationship with them and with God. Every time. Every time. With reconciliation. So we're all pretty familiar with Genesis 33, where Jacob and Esau kind of have their thing, and Jacob steals Esau's birthright, and then he steals the blessing. And have your kids ever fought? Or maybe have you ever fought with your brother or your sister? So Jacob, he steals these things, and Esau's like, "I'm going to kill you," and his mom's like, "Get out of here," because he means it. So Jacob goes and builds a life away, and then it's time to come home. Jacob's still afraid of Esau, and so he gathers presents and all kinds of others to go before him to soften his brother's heart toward him, to give him a cleaner pathway to make his reentrance into Esau's life. You know he's terrified. This is why he separates his family, right? So that if anything does happen, maybe not everyone will suffer the consequences of Esau's wrath. You ever feel like that when you're going to talk to somebody about something that needs to be worked out face to face and with the courage that it takes to accept what's coming, stay and accept it, and then try and work it out. My favorite part in this one is Genesis 33:4. But Esau ran to meet him and embraced him and fell on his neck and kissed him, and they wept. It's not like they were buddy-buddy afterwards. They didn't even live in the same town anymore. But they reconciled there. They made their peace. And Esau no longer pursued Jacob in an effort to get him back. How about Joseph and his brothers? Joseph was kind of a brat when he was young, possibly. At the point where he was pretty bratty, he was one of the youngest too. It happens. I'd like to say it's a natural sort of thing. His brothers, they thought they got rid of him, right? They threw him in the pit, sold him as a slave, and then went and told his father he'd been killed by a wild animal. Problem solved. But Joseph rose to power in Egypt, and when famine struck and his brothers journeyed to Egypt for food, they had no idea what they were walking into. Again, see, God has this sense of humor, and I think sometimes we miss that opportunity to say, I bet God's smiling through this part. He's like, man, this is going to be interesting. And I don't mean that to say that he's glad when people are nervous or afraid or they come into a situation, but I think he smiles because he sees the opportunity that we're getting faced with. When Joseph reveals his identity to them, they were afraid that he was angry with him and that he would punish them. But Joseph says, come near to me, please. And they came near, and he said, I am your brother Joseph, whom you sold into Egypt. And now do not be distressed or angry with yourselves because you sold me here. Okay, that's one thing, but their dad's still alive. So if dad's still alive, maybe Joseph's, one of those serene people we were just talking about who says, it's okay, maybe Joseph's playing the peace faker moment. His brothers aren't sure. I mean, it's kind of a big deal what they did. So Jacob dies, and the brothers, still afraid. So Joseph has to reassure them again. Guys, I forgive you. It's real. I forgive you. Let's be reconciled. Let's move forward as a family together. I'm not holding on to this. You don't need to hold on to it. How do we live that out? It's all good and fine when it happens in the Bible. You get to read the beginning, the middle, and the end. You're like, boom, that was super clean. Never that clean for me. When I had the awesome opportunity to go to the, I'm not going to say it right, Global Leadership Summit. I said it right, up in Bellingham earlier this year. There were so many amazing speakers, but one of them that stood out to me when I was thinking about our topic of reconciliation, her name is Immaculée Elibigisa. I don't want to mess that up. She was born and raised in a small village in Rwanda, Africa. She enjoyed a peaceful childhood with her loving parents and 3 brothers. Education was very important in her household, so it was no surprise that she did well in school and went on to the National University of Rwanda to study electrical and mechanical engineering. It was while she was home from school on Easter break in 1994 that Immaculée's life was transformed forever. On April 6th of that year, the Rwandan president's plane was shot down over the capital city of Kigali. This assassination, of the Hutu president sparked months of massacre of Tutsi tribe members throughout the country. Not even small rural communities like Immaculate's were spared from the house-by-house slaughtering of men, women, and children. To protect his only daughter from rape and murder, Immaculate's father told her to run to a local pastor's house for protection. The pastor quickly sheltered Immaculate and 7 other women hidden in a 3-foot by 4-foot bathroom. It's pretty small. And I keep thinking, but they were in a bathroom, so some needs were super taken care of. For the next 91 days, Immaculate and the other women huddled silently in this small room while the genocide raged outside the home and throughout the country. And when she told us this story, she talked about those moments inside and how each time that they came to the door and were looking for people, they accepted the response that the bathroom door was broken, I think, or a lock, or something. I can't remember that specific detail, that they never were discovered in there. I mean, to me, that's amazing. That's 3 months. 3 months that you're in this teeny tiny room, safe only because God has said that this is a safe place. While in hiding, anger and resentment were destroying Immaculate's mind, body, and spirit. It was then that Immaculate turned to prayer. Prior to going to the pastor's home, Immaculate's father, a devout Catholic, gave her a set of rosary beads. She began to pray the rosary as a way of drowning out the anger inside her and the evil outside the house. It was that turning point towards God and away from hate that saved Immaculate. I said the Lord's Prayer hundreds of times, hoping to forgive the killers who were murdering all around me. It was no use. Every time I got to the part asking God to forgive those who trespass against us, my mouth went dry. I couldn't say the words because I truly didn't embrace the feeling behind them. She didn't want to be a peace faker. My inability to forgive caused even greater pain than the anguish I felt being separated from my family, and it was worse than the physical torment of being constantly hunted. I just think about it. Here you are, so many people died all around her all of these days. And it was a bloodbath. And after she comes out, it's not like it's over cleaned up and done. You know, like you can be in there and you can be praying to God and you can be asking him to make these changes in your life. And you still have to come out. And you still have to see the devastation that is in front of you. She found her entire family had been brutally murdered, with the exception of one brother who was studying abroad. She also found nearly 1 million of her extended family, friends, neighbors, and fellow Rwandans massacred. So there was cleanup, there was still more prayer, there was still more time. And when things had kind of settled down, and after the genocide, Immaculate came face to face with the man who killed her mother and one of her brothers. If she hadn't been doing that work with God prior to this face-to-face opportunity that didn't probably feel like an opportunity, right? You walk up to somebody to reconcile. This is not feeling like an opportunity. This is feeling like a sentence of punishment. I must live through this so that I can get on the other side. It was an opportunity. And after enduring months of physical, mental, and spiritual suffering, Immaculate was still able to offer the unthinkable. And she told the man, "I forgive you." And they were able to be reconciled. This massacre, this genocide, it was reading about it and hearing about it. It would be like all of us and a number of us just turned to the other one, and all of a sudden we're no longer equals. All of a sudden we're no longer fellow countrymen. We are enemies. I mean, that just... So this is not a this happened in another place in the world situation. This is not a couldn't happen to us. This is a, and they do say that in the end times that we're going to be looking at brother against brother, and there's going to be this kind of strife. But while we have this moment, while we have this time, let it not be now. Let's be reconciled to each other. So that was Rwanda. How about here in Mount Vernon? Aren't you glad most of us all get along? Just kidding. So a couple mornings ago, Rick and I were talking about almond milk. Such a benign topic, almond milk. And it was very simple, really. I had just bought another case from Costco. And we have in the past made it because in the past it was so much cheaper to make it than to buy it. And so he asked me, so is it still cheaper to make it, or is it now cheaper to buy it? Well, first of all, this is like I just ate breakfast, so I've probably not been awake long enough to really, the gears are not turning. I frankly have not, had any of my lovely morning beverages, maybe some water, and now I'm like, okay, I'm going to answer this question. So I sit down with my trusty phone, and I ask Siri, my constant buddy, hey, first I went to the page where it tells me which bag of nuts I'm buying from the store, and I see how much that bag costs, and well, that bag is sold by weight. And so I say, how many cups of almond are in a pound of almonds? Or I said, how many individual almonds are in a cup? Or how many pounds in a cup? Yeah, see, this is why you shouldn't do math first thing in the morning. This is just, guys, don't try this at home. So he hears that, and out of concern for my time and my energy, he thinks that I'm going about the process all wrong. And so he interrupts my brain, which just sees point B way down there, right? It's like, I'm going to get there. Just stay on track. Don't anybody talk to me. I'm going to get to point B. And Rick says, you should be doing that by volume. So one neat fact about Rick is that he is super logical and loves math. I, however, did not grow up loving math. So when it was time to take geometry, and I found out, I don't have to finish the semester, sayonara, because this whole thing of planes that go on forever, guys, this makes me uncomfortable. So in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, listen, you probably have it all worked out. But you're distracting me because, guys, I'm point A and I need to get to point B. So I shut him down. I didn't think I was shutting him down. I was like, can you just wait? Because I want to get you this answer. I'm going to get there. And he felt like I was like, shut up. You're wrong or something. I don't know. He didn't say it like that. I didn't say it like that either, just for the record. I knew that I had a plan, but he couldn't read my mind. And instead of talking to him about how I was going to go through this process, I just wanted to be left alone so I could get to point B. So a few moments later, the exchange was shut down by two very stubborn and right people. But guess what? Because we were determined to make the other one see what we meant, why we were right, we kept the conversation going back and forth until we discovered the misunderstanding and addressed our feelings and how they were getting in the way of our listening. And this is what I mean by it's not complex. We had to sit. We had to decide to listen and not get all of our feelings coming out of us like some verbal vomit, and give the other person an opportunity. And maybe that first bit didn't, go so smoothly or so beautifully or so nicely. But guess what? It got us to I was at point B. That's how long I put him off, guys. So you can imagine being really frustrated sitting there with someone's just like, I'm not going to pay attention to you, blah, blah, blah. And this person's thinking you're doing it wrong, you're wasting time, let's just get this fixed. So then I walked him through my point A to point B. And if I had just done that in the beginning instead of shutting him down, could have saved a lot of time and a lot of feelings. But then I wouldn't have a story. Because otherwise it never happens in our house. Usually it's about something else. Not almond milk. So if you buy your almonds at Costco in the 3-pound bag, it costs more. It costs $7 more. We're not talking, oh good, yeah, no tax food, right? It's $7 more than it is to buy it by the case of 6. So yeah. All's well that ends well, right? No, not actually, not always. So that was us again, and we obviously have to continue to go through life and reconcile. The more we practice reconciling in the little things, I know this is like basic stuff, probably like addition in math if people like that. It's basic. You practice little, you get good at the big, right? So you don't walk away empty-handed with this silly story of almond milk, but it's cheaper to buy it at Costco. Here's some guidelines for when you're feeling reluctant to reconcile. Be honest about your motives. There's a difference between being honest and being mean, being rude, or being retaliatory. Being honest means making a statement. Watch your tone. Just for the record, I'm reading these to me again and again, and they're going to go up on my wall. So, have a humble attitude. Put off vengeful thoughts and attitudes. Offenders do not earn forgiveness. Okay? If you wronged me, you don't need to earn my forgiveness. You may ask for my forgiveness, but you will have to earn my trust. See the difference? I can forgive you, but it will take time and it will take effort to trust you. So when I've wronged someone, I need to make sure that I am humble. And when they have wronged me, I need to be humble. Because it's very easy to have some sense of pride because you were the one who was wronged, and therefore I'm going to skip to number 4 because I really feel like these should be back, So be willing to admit your actions may have contributed to the problem. And that's not excusing behaviors, but just let's keep the motives pure, guys. It's possible that it was a little bit of a tit and a little bit of a tat, and boom, now you're... It takes 2 to tango. That's how they say, right? And I don't think they're talking about dancing all the time. All right, be prayerful about the one who hurt you. We have to be honest with God and say, I'm really, really, really mad, or I am really, really hurt, and I don't want to go and talk to this person. So help, and please soften my heart towards this person. So when we're being honest, we need to take the time that you need. But it's also easy to just extend it a little longer, a little more control. I mean, I don't really relate to any of this control stuff too much. I might have a little bit of a problem. But yeah, so you take the time, but don't extend it as control or manipulation or punishment. And then be objective when you're hesitating. If you're hesitant to reconcile, clearly define your objective reasons for doubting your offender's sincerity. Now be clear about guidelines for restoration. Again, if you don't let them know how you would like for things to be restored, then it's going to be really, really tough for them to meet the mark. And then it's always good to have someone repeat things back, because I don't know about you, but sometimes when I'm in the middle of a conversation and this is like, feelings and working stuff out, I'm going to remember how I felt in 2 days. I might not remember all the specifics as well as if I didn't relay them back, or maybe even go back and say, hey, we talked about this. Is this what I'm supposed to be working on? Is this what you were expecting? Is this how we're going to continue to work toward this reconciliation? All right. Be alert to the evil one's schemes, because guess what? Prolonged anger gives Satan an in. So it's very easy to be right and to maybe talk to your friends and have them tell you you're right. And then it's sowing all these little seeds of being right and still holding on to this anger, these problems, or being on the other side and feeling like, I can't fix this, I'm not worthy. I mean, either way, guys, Satan's always looking his way to worm into our relationships. And all he's got in mind is to separate, divide, and kill. So when you're having these moments, when you're having a moment of, I don't want to, try to have that awareness, try to let that Holy Spirit in and see that the longer that goes, the easier it is to just not even deal with it, which doesn't get you to reconciliation. It gets you to peace faking. So be mindful of God's control. What is his plan in this situation? Oh, what? Now I'm dealing with feelings and restoration. And then on top of that, I've got to think about what God wants me to learn. Yep. Actually, scratch that. That should just always be everything. What is God's plan for this situation? Blanket. Okay. To quote once again from Kevin Sandy, when you are having a hard time forgiving someone being restored, take time to note how God may be using that offense for good. Is this an unusual opportunity to glorify God? How can you serve others and help them grow in their faith? What sins and weaknesses of yours are being exposed? This story of the almond milk. What character qualities are you being challenged to exercise? When you perceive that the person who has wronged you is being used as an instrument in God's hand to help you mature, serve others, and glorify him, it may be easier for you to move ahead with forgiveness and restoration. Okay, this is really important. Be realistic about the process and the time it will take. I have been guilty of wanting to just fix it. We don't have to keep talking about it. Let's just, I'm sorry, you're sorry, we understand what went wrong, let's move on. And that's all good and fine for, maybe now or 5 minutes or maybe tomorrow, but the next day, hurt feelings don't just go away. They don't go away, and so we have to continue to practice these moments of connection, of fellowship, of reconnecting, of continuing to be in a place of humble and forgiving attitudes. So be realistic about how long that might take. And, of course, it just depends on how bad off the thing was. The almond milk, I'm happy to say we were good to go. Did not take that long, okay? But there are other situations and other things that have longer lasting effects, and they're going to take longer to heal from. So in conclusion, if we look at Malachi 4, 5, and 6, it points to increasing family closeness as one of the earmarks of the final gospel message. Malachi predicts a work of reconciliation and reconnecting in families, a turning of the hearts of the fathers to the children, and the hearts of the children to their fathers. This is to be accomplished by Elijah and predicted to happen before the coming of the great day of the Lord. The most significant arena in which this final gospel message must take hold is in the home. Like all things created, marriage and family are entangled in the web of the great controversy between Christ and Satan. It is the purpose of the gospel to restore marriage and family to God's original design. Families desperately need reconciliation between the generations, within each generation and between the genders. The world desperately needs the witness that such reconciliation bears. So significant is this coming together in unity that Jesus made it the focal point of his prayer for his followers. Through our relationships in Christian marriage and family life, we may honor God, or may honor Jesus' prayer. May they be brought to complete unity to let the world know that you sent me and have loved them even as you have loved me. John 17:23.